distorted echoes, shattered illusions. Did we ever watch the full moon rise? Dreaming, am I dreaming? Blurry shadows photographed, unfolding petals, moments redeeming. Did we ever catch a firefly? Oh no, it's time to go, to bid farewell. Homes overgrown, don't tears me from a Monday. Our tale will be told again and again. I promise I won't forget you, though tears may fall us till the end. Deeply imprinted, bound by your love, you won't be lost in time's confine. Memories, you're my memories, broken image, etched inside my mind. Yet if I awake and you've slipped away, will we ever catch a firefly memories, or am I dreaming? In twilight's haze, your essence beams, silence is deafening, colors are dimming. Have we watched the last full moon
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our tribute series to Ryuichi Sakamoto, Sakamoto Blue Sky, and you've just watched a new world premiere work by our guest artist this week, Sirintip. So welcome to...
Thank you so much.
So happy and so honored to have you as part of our series. And for those who don't know, Sirintip is also with us this fall in person on Saturday, October 14th for UMass Amherst Family Weekend at 3 p.m. on the lawn outside of Goodell Hall for a carbon neutral free concert of her work. And we'll get more into Sirintip's environmental activism and how she really incredibly integrates that with her artistic output. And then she'll also be on a interdisciplinary panel with us with science and writing experts as well. But let's get into your work. So what was the inspiration behind this piece? Can you talk more about it?
Yes. So when I got asked to write this piece for Mr. Sakamoto, I actually hadn't listened to him that much before. I didn't know, or I actually had listened to him, but I didn't know it was him. And what I realized when I started digging into his catalog was A, how many songs and pieces I actually recognized, and then B, how many similarities there was between his music and my music. Because I'm a composer, I've written for film, he's written for film, I've arranged for orchestra, he obviously has also worked for orchestra. He produces pop and works with experimental synth sounds, and I do that too. And then he also has his most known piano pieces with really strong melodies that is something that I've always connected with. And I'm not sure if that's maybe something about that we both have Asian backgrounds, and in Asian culture, it's very common that you want to have melodies that you can sing. So when I was growing up, that was just such a massive part of having beautiful melodies that everyone could sing along to. So even now that I have a lot of jazz influences in my music and experimental influences into my music, that thread always comes through of something that is singable on top of that.
Mhm. And yeah, both from an Asian background, and both of you, maybe for similar, maybe for various reasons, drawn to New York City. Do you have any thoughts about that connection, or why maybe you can talk about why you came? Because and I say that because he's sort of famously talked about how he specifically chose New York because of its internationalism, and how he wanted to be this sort of cross-cultural and specifically intercultural sort of artist and thinker and maker. Even though at the same time, he also admitted he couldn't escape his Asianness and his Japaneseness. Do you have thoughts about that parallel?
I think we probably have a very similar thought process because I was born in Thailand, and then when I was 11, I moved to Stockholm, Sweden. And then now I've been living in New York City for 8 years. And for me, New York has just felt like the perfect combination of Bangkok's like craziness and all the people and all the smells and the noise. There's so much noise there versus Sweden and Stockholm is more minimalist, and everyone's kind of like calmer in a sense. So New York has both sides. And I think that music is such a powerful tool to connect people because you don't necessarily need to understand the language that is sung in order to enjoy the music, or especially with instrumental music. It's something really, really cool, and maybe we'll dig into it more with the environmental aspect too, and science specifically, that music and art has the ability to make people feel something even if they don't understand what they're seeing or experiencing. And it's really, really cool to be able to do that in New York, and to be a person among this like diversity of all people from all types of cultures. And even now, after 8 years of living in New York, I don't know that many people who are actually born in New York. Most people are from everywhere else, and I love that so much.
Yeah, it's so amazing to me. I'm Gen X. I'm sort of aging myself. I'm in my 50s, and if you had told me when I was in high school or college, undergrad, or as a young adult, in my 20s even, that someday Asian artists, like if from Asia, not just Asian American, but from Asia, singing in a different language, would have #1 hits consistently in the US, I would have said you were crazy. But
Yeah.
we seem to be, finally, I think beautifully living in this era where something's opened up, something is not just more accepted, but like some kind of switch has been flipped in the sort of collective pop cultural consciousness of the West, at least among more open-minded folks and communities, where they're looking for something deeper. They're keying into some deeper sort of emotional emotion or psychological experience or life experience. BTS is just kind of the most obvious example, but I discovered you in Winter Jazz Fest, and I don't think you maybe you did. I don't think you sang. I think all the songs you sang were in English, but for me, your sensibility is a very explicitly intercultural. And I'm curious if you can kind of share with our listeners, our viewers, your influences and kind of how you put together things into your singular voice.
So actually at Winter Jazz Fest, um, I sang a few words in Thai. I kind of like have one of the lyrics on a song that has to do with air quality index, AQI, that's the name of the song. So I think the lyric is she's staring at the she's staring at this. She's staring at the now I can't remember my own words. Um, mhm. She's staring at the edge of the city lights and hai chai. So hai chai means breathe. So I have certain things like that I kind of just like throw in a word because you mentioned BTS and K-pop does that a lot, but like a lot of the lyrics are in Korean and then they have like splurges of English words. So I was kind of flipping with that perspective, and then actually a lot of my background vocals are in Thai. So if you understand both languages, then it sounds like a call and response, and you understand what is being said. But if you don't understand the language, then you're just getting an idea of like different types of sounds in the background vocals. So I mentioned before that I'm very jazz influenced and jazz inspired, and in many ways, I do see myself as a jazz artist, even if other people would argue that I'm not. It's a very complicated thing to talk about, but I think it's so interesting and inspiring, especially coming from Asian culture, because there's so many other sounds in our languages. Like Thai language has 44 consonants and 32 vowels. And it just gives me a lot of ideas on how I can explore my voice and what types of sounds I can make. So I've been very purposefully like putting that into my music to bring awareness to Thai language because a lot of people don't know it, but then also to just kind of widen the idea of vocal jazz and what kinds of sounds you can do, that it doesn't need to always be bebop and scat with specific syllables the way we've heard Ella Fitzgerald done it many, many, many times. But there's a whole other side of sounds that we could explore.
Yeah. Do you think the fact that Thai is a tonal language also lends a certain sort of flavor or range or scope to your artistry because you're inherently firsthand are able to draw on it?
Probably. I don't know if I've thought about it directly like that. But I know that when I have been writing songs and melodies in Thai specifically, I need to be very um, careful with how I write the melody because, for instance, like ma means come here versus ma means horse. So if the melody goes up, but I wanted to say come here, then it could accidentally sound like I'm saying horse instead of come here.
Right.
So in Thai, definitely, but in English, I haven't really done that yet.
Right. So being Thai, um, and being an environmental activist and drawing in your work aesthetically, thematically, etc., from all of your various cultural influences, firsthand or otherwise. In Bangkok, because you grew up in and around Bangkok, and Bangkok being this metropolis that has all the beauty and all the horror, frankly, of capitalism, of environmental crises, is that something that's sort of, either consciously or perhaps, in the waters of your mind, your heart, your artistry when you're writing songs or creating music?
I think subconsciously, probably yes. Like, I definitely really believe in that whatever comes in goes out. So it's like if you've experienced something, it's in you somehow, and it will come out somehow. But I think for me, firsthand, with my whole environmental activism, has to do with growing up in Thailand, and my parents were working in the tourist industry. So as a child, I would go with my mom to different resorts that she was signing contracts with, and my job as a child was to be the pool inspector to make sure that it was good for kids. So I would write ratings on all the different pools and just like, oh, this slide here makes me fall right into a rock. That's not a good design. Um, but we would also go to all these different islands and we would snorkel. So when I was a child, there I remember being so scared of all the fish, and it was beautiful, of course, but I would be in the water and there was just so much fish around me, and that was scary. But then when I've returned to those same places in my early adulthood, now there's no fish, and that has been really scary to firsthand see, and it's actually been more scary that there's no fish than that there was too much fish when I was a child.
Wow.
So I think that being there, and also like you mentioned in Bangkok, like I just I have this perspective, I think, of a different type of poverty. So for instance, even when I was growing up, I had a nanny, and after she's been working with us for a few months, she was able to afford a toilet. And we went up to her house in the northeast part of Thailand. And after she got the toilet installed for her mother, so her mother didn't need to squat on the ground. And she was like the only one in her village that had a toilet, and her house didn't have any walls. And, it's very, very, very it's a very different type of poverty than what we have here in the US. To, like, see that, and then you're thinking about the people of, like, "Oh, why are they wasting so much plastic? Why are they selling all this food in plastic bags? Why are they just throwing everything around? Why are they not being more conscious?" And that's just because there's no infrastructure or economy really for them to make better choices. It's like they're barely making enough to survive. You can't ask them to buy a Tesla when they can't even afford a regular car, So it's that entire perspective, and then moving to Sweden, which on an infrastructure level, there's so much more support. So it's much easier to be environmentally more conscious in Sweden because like all their trains are carbon neutral. They have laws in place of what kind of detergents you can use that are better for the environment. The packaging is the same thing. So then you have choices that are built in for you. So you can just naturally make better choices, and then you can also, of course, choose to make even better choices. And I can see that in the US, there is enough money to have an infrastructure that is more sustainable, and a lot of people do have also more money to make better choices. So I think that that's kind of like how I've been inspired of seeing the extremes, and then now being in a place where I feel like people could do better if they just decided to make the choice to do better.
Yeah. Um, Getting back to Ryuichi Sakamoto, so you're, for me, an amazing example of a activist artist, and of course, a lot of us know him as one too. Do you have any thoughts about him either in terms of his legacy, the history, or him as an example or model of how, one path, one way or approach to integrate activism and art making, what that means, kind of, in the arts world. Do you have thoughts about this?
Definitely. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. So last year I was invited out on a research vessel with 25 scientists who were studying plankton. And my job on the ship as the only artist was to create music based on their research. And um, one of the things that I was thinking about a lot is artistic value versus informative value. That sometimes certain artists can be very inspired by nature, but it's not scientifically accurate, or like there's no science base to it. It's just like very kind of abstract. Versus on the other side, there are other people, especially working with the data scientification, who are just taking a scientific data set, turning into pitches, and then they're done. So there's no like emotional connection to what's happening, or artistic afterthought to this is it. This is the kind of emotion or story I want to tell. This is just data that you can hear. So I've always been trying to find that balance. And while I was on the ship, I was exploring different data sets, and I was creating soundtracks to scientific underwater footage, and um, giving voices to organisms, and just kind of playing with a lot of things. And then now I'm actually right now in Oregon, where I've been working with scientists, both fungi scientists and plankton scientists, together with my collaborators, Nichato Tong, who is the visual designer, and Danny Giannacucci, who is a composer. And working with them and being on this trip, this time after being working on the Sakamoto piece and kind of synthesizing the ideas that he had, I have, I think I have started to uncover something new, which is that you can be emotionally truthful in your art. Because with science, if you're turning science into music or art, you science is just very factful, and you can have the diagrams and the all the measurements, and that's where what science is good at. And as soon as you try to turn that into art, there could be again this disruption of something that is artistically pleasing versus something that's very scientifically accurate. But the thing that science can't do is to capture the emotional truth of something. And that is something that I think Sakamoto does beautifully. So with like his glacier piece that he went and recorded the ping out there, and you hear the water, and also with the tsunami piano, that there's so many ways that he is really excellently and elegantly able to capture the emotional truth of something that's based in science.
Mhm. Yeah. And and for me, it's also really wonderful and affecting how he always kept it personal as well. So there's I don't know if you saw, and I think it's an NHK, the Japanese TV network. They did a little mini documentary. It's about a half hour on the tsunami piano, and they filmed um, folks from the town where the piano was, not destroyed, but damaged, to the installation, the final work. And they they get it instantly because it's so embodied and it's so deep, and they know, they sort of understand, obviously in their bones, kind of what that crisis and that struggle and that journey, and not just a human journey, but like a material journey, the organic, um, the journey that the organic matter, that we're
Mm.
composed of, that the earth is composed of, that the elements, space, um, and to see the music teacher, for example, in that high school, just get really emotional about that, which seems cliche, but it's not. It's something. It's like everything coming together, and I just really really loved that. I loved, and for me, that's what when you go deep on some of your compositions. You have um, a track in your recent album Carbon, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's climate data from the rise in global temperature, I believe,
Hmm.
since the 1800s. What's can you remind me what the name of the track is?
1.5.
1.5, right. Um, and you know, such I think that's also a very elegant approach. Like you just have to know the simple fact, so to speak, of the compositional data and the climate data, and you get it, and then you feel the emotion because of the the aesthetic composition and the performance qualities as well. So yeah, so given all of that and given that legacy and folks like yourselves making the kind of work you do, what's your hope for the future of arts and activism? Like where would you like to see the field be in 5 years, 10 years? Like how are we going to save the earth? Or are we going to save part of it anyways, or part of ourselves? The earth's always going to be there, you know. It's our
Yeah.
it's our hubris that talks about equates humanity with the earth, and that's something that always actually frankly upsets me. um People, it's actually a very myopic way to view the earth through the lens of our experience, but the earth isn't human experience. The earth is its own experience, its own reality. So anyway, given all that, what are your hopes for the future?
You're asking such great questions. And it's funny because I've been asking the same questions to the scientists that I've been working with. Um, so I think I'm just gonna be sharing a little bit of what they've shared with me because we're just working with the scientists and asking them very honestly, what do you think about climate change? Is it real? Like, what's happening? Do we have hope? Is it all doom and gloom? And they're all acknowledging that it is very real and it's happening much faster than they've, you know, thought in the past because science just takes like a really, really long time to discover. And it's very much similar to the art world too, that it has to do with scientists being interested in learning and researching about something and then applying for grants to get the funding to do that research. So much science, especially the things that have been inspiring me lately, which is microorganisms, have just been understudied because, again, like we talked about, that humans tend to only want to connect with things that they see.
Mhm.
So you can relate to a huge tree because you've been outside and seen that, or maybe you've experienced a whale or a penguin, and those types of animals. But especially with the tiny little guys that you can't really see with your bare eyes, they've been very, very understudied. But they're the foundation of everything. So if the ecosystem within them changes drastically, it would just affect everything because they're at the very foundation. Um, so I think my thoughts on climate change and hope and arts and all of that is that um, I do think in general the public needs to just reduce and just be more conscious about their choices. One of the biggest things is just to eat more plant-based food. I believe agriculture is 25 to 36% of our total global carbon emissions. That might be wrong with that number. My brain is not super great with numbers, but the point is that it's a pretty big percentage. So if everyone eats more plant-based globally, it would make like a massive, massive difference. And I think what arts can do is to be that build that bridge between science and the public. Because again, if you're just looking at a graph or you're trying to understand something you can't see with your eyes, as a non-scientist, you're going to tune out because you don't understand what you're looking at. But with art, you don't need to understand what you're looking at, but you can feel. feel it. And when you're feeling it and you're understanding it, and it's a little complicated because, like you said, I don't think that we should think that everything on this earth is the same as humans or, are perceiving time or perceiving the world or perceiving anything like humans. But I do think that there is something about being able to relate to the human experience that helps people connect with it more. So I think that arts can be that bridge of making it personal, making people understand that, oh, this tiny organism is not that different from us. We might think that they're different, or we might think that, oh, this organism doesn't have a brain, which means that it's not intellectual, but it doesn't have a centralized nervous system, but it does have a nervous system. And in many ways, it's actually more effective than our brain. So it's about just being conscious and understanding that just because something is not like us, it doesn't mean that it's different from us or that being different is bad. And yeah. So I think that arts can just be massive, and I would love for more artists to do this. I think it's actually an artistic responsibility to be aware of how you're connecting with the public. And with the song 1.5, it helps to bring awareness to the 1.5 Celsius scenario, which is projected to happen in 6 years. So if all artists can jump on board and put in this work within the next 6 years, I would love to see that.
Boy, well, there's your conference, folks. Let's do it. Thank you again to Sirintip for her beautiful work, for the series, and for all the beautiful work in all the meanings of the word work that she's doing, that you're doing, excuse me, in your all of your activity. Where can folks learn more about you?
I have a website, which is www dot did I do 3 of them? Yeah, www dot serentipofficial.com.
Okay,
Yes.
and to learn more, to see more of our series, and of course all of our season activities, both in performing and visual arts, you can go to fineartscenter.com or fac.umass.edu, and of course, as you're witnessing right now, our YouTube channel at UMass Fine Arts Center. And with that, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.